Welcome to the Sean Chandler Podcast, a place to talk movies and nerd culture way too much. Joining me, as always, is Griffin. It's been a few weeks since we've done one of these. How have you been?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. I was actually just sitting down to do this. It feels longer than a couple weeks. Dare I say it feels like maybe a month. Um, but no, it's good to be back here talking about stuff.
But if you think about it, because we took a week to do the Sam review, we took a week off from the live show, and so then this week is also delayed a few days, and so it's at the back end of the week. We took last week off because everything going on in the world, and then the week before that was pre-recorded, and so it's been almost a month since we've done one of these. I didn't even realize that until we sat down to do it. I was like, man, it feels like forever since we've done this. It has. I think I had the beard.
It has been. Yeah, you did. You had a beard. You had the crazy hair. And now I'm the guy with the weird mustache and the crazy hair. You just can't see because I'm wearing headphones. But I had something I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
Right before we started, and then I forgot it. It'll come to me. And I'll interrupt you during like a story or something and be like, so this is exactly what I wanted to talk about. Not Evil Dead 4. Not Sony's PS5 release. No. I wanted to talk about this.
So if any of you guys saw my scheduled plan for the week, as well as my pre-announcement of this, Kristen Maldonado was originally going to join us. She had to back out this morning just a couple of hours ago. So we'll just be the two of us. So I guess we'll get to do lots of catch up. But she'll be on the show as soon as we can get her back. Maybe next week, maybe a couple of weeks. But absolutely plan on having her on. It just didn't work out this particular day. But yeah, we had a bunch of interesting kind of stuff drop over the last few days because the big PlayStation 5 reveal was yesterday, in which case inside of that, we got some information about a new Spider-Man. Looks like expansion DLC stuff. Earlier this week, we heard about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2 updates on it. Vigo and Peter Farley are reteaming after Green Book for another film. Kenneth Brannagh discusses wanting to do an animated Shakespeare film. We've got discussion of an Evil Dead 4 director. HBO Max has been out now. Like, we haven't even talked about HBO Max since it came out because of the timing on all of this. And then a little bit on James Bond leak. So we got a bunch of different stuff we want to talk about today. But if you're listening to the audio version of this, be sure to leave a review, a score. I can't say that we're in the launch phase anymore because now we're at almost 20 episodes, over 3 months into this deal. But it still does help out the channel ranking better to get more people to get eyes. I guess not eyes because you don't watch this if you're on the audio version of this because you're quite literally on the audio version where you hear it. But as we go through this, we'll do the main section of this. And if you're on the live stream right now, because we are recording this live, we'll take some Q&A at the end of it if you want to send in some questions. And with that said, let's just go ahead and get started talking about the big PlayStation 5 reveal. They had a whole presentation yesterday where they teased all of the launch titles, a bunch of new exclusive games, a bunch of older games kind of coming back. The big thing that people were talking about is that they announced Spider-Man Miles Morales. So we'll get to that in the actual further revelations on the Spider-Man game. Did you have any big takeaways about the PlayStation 5? Is this the sort of thing that like you get into the specs and all of that?
I don't really get into all the specs and all the like tech stuff. I usually kind of just defer to one of my good friends who's more of a gamer and more tech savvy than myself as it pertains to that stuff. So I'll probably just wait and chat with him to really dive into it. I didn't even watch the presentation. I just kind of like saw the updates as it came through, and I saw the games that are coming out. So we got like Spider-Man Miles Morales, the expansion. We got like Ratchet and Clank, which I am super excited for because that's like that's been one of my favorite video game franchises ever since I was a kid. So like getting to see a new one with a new gen system and whatnot will be really exciting. But I guess the big takeaway is that the console itself is just like it's a really weird design. Like I've seen people like going around comparing it to an internet router. And it kind of makes sense. Listen, I don't care. It can be the ugliest piece of plastic on the planet as long as it works well. It works as a 4K Blu-ray player. It works as like this amazing system and whatnot. Then I'm all in. I don't know. I'm not necessarily the biggest gaming expert, so.
Yeah, that's kind of for me. I had a bunch of people message me, "Hey man, what did you think about the PlayStation 5? Hey man, what did you think about the look of the PlayStation 5? Hey man, what did you think?" And I'm just not a big enough gamer. Like I just caught up on the Uncharted games. That's like if you ever want to imagine besides Spider-Man or Batman, what would be a more like fine-tuned video game for my personal tastes? It's the Uncharted games, and I discovered them during quarantine. And so I'm always really far behind on this stuff. And I've been saying this, I'll say it right here again. I'm thinking PlayStation 5 might be the first system that I buy at launch, simply because of the channel and everything like that. And also, I don't have a 4K player. And so this could be my opportunity to get a 4K player. So I'll buy a TV, find a 4K TV in the next month and get the player for it later this year.
That's the thing. It's like forcing it's similar to you. It's forcing me to upgrade to things that I've wanted to do forever.
Right.
And it also helps that I have a little extra cash right now due to some stimulus checks. So maybe that's where I can, put my money away. Not save it for when I inevitably have to buy a house or whatever. No, I'm going to buy a PS5
Great choice
with the stimulus money.
And so like same kind of with you. People are like, what do you think about the specs they gave on it? I was like, well, I don't think anything about them. I barely know what they mean, except they're not as good as this new laptop that I think I bought like right before we did. I think I did a last live stream. But like I don't have strong opinions on the tech side to it. I just know it's going to be faster and more powerful. But I struggle with the fact of even on the technological side of playing through being so far behind on video games. I'm playing through Uncharted 4 and Uncharted Lost Legacy recently. I'm like, what do you do next? Like what can you get better? Like this is so good.
Yeah, I know. It looks
like I get it.
It's crazy. I agree. I mean, that's the thing that always just kind of like it always blows my mind how like when you reach a point when technology is like incredible already, and then they somehow surpass that, and it already looks like it's going to be better. It's like how. I don't know. What is it going to look like 15 years from now? 20 years from now,
right?
Like that's gonna be mind blowing. The PS4 was honestly one of the best gaming consoles to have ever come out. And I know everyone kind of says that as we say goodbye to the last gen system, but like the PS4 had some of the best exclusive games on the marketplace between like God of War, Spider-Man. The Last of Us, we got The Last of Us Part 2 coming out, obviously in a week or so that'll be really exciting. But so like the PS5 has a lot to live up to, but like if this launch is any indication, I think we're in store for something like great.
Right, and I'm old enough that I remember when the original Doom came out.
Yeah,
PlayStation, shareware. You could get the first episode for free on a disc or a couple of discs. Oh, yeah. And when it came out, I thought this is incredible. Like this looks so real. We've made it. How could anything ever look better than this? And I mean, when he cocks the shotgun, it literally goes like this. It's about 4 frames per second.
It looks terrible now. Yeah.
Call of Duty Modern Warfare came out, and I mean, my brain was blown away. As I was like, this is like, we're going into the cinematics. The cinematics and gameplay have the exact same look to them. It's like I'm in a movie. The world is shaking. This is true 3D. This is so immersive. And that was like 13 years ago now. And we're about to get a generation beyond that. That's the stuff that kind of blows my mind as to where the technology is at and what we're able to do. Black Toad said, what happened to Kristen? We said this at the beginning. She had to back out about an hour before we started. She'll be on at some point in time, maybe next week, maybe 2 weeks from now. But absolutely, I want to have her on. She was supposed to be on back in April, and it was going to be live in person. She was going to come to Texas, into Houston, and we had this whole kind of plan that we've been talking about for several months. And then 2020 happened, so we had to cancel that. So we weren't able to do that particular plan. And then today, once again, it's the second time our plans have fallen through. So the other thing that we need to talk about in here is specifically Spider-Man Miles Morales. That was the big thing everyone was talking about. Yeah. Is that they put out this trailer for a follow-up to Spider-Man PlayStation 4, a great game that was universally loved. I loved it. Fantastic game. It's how I teach my kids about New York City is by playing that game. But so they put out this trailer with Miles Morales and clearly a continuation. So the big discussion yesterday was, is this a sequel? Is it a spinoff? What exactly is this? They clarified this morning, sort of. but it's essentially like DLC continuation.
Yeah,
Exactly how that plays out of, do you need to buy a new copy of it? Is it going to be like Uncharted Lost Legacy, that it's essentially DLC but released separately? It's still kind of unclear, but it's not full-blown a sequel. It's not full-blown a spin-off. It is continuation inside of it. So what a disappointing way to make that announcement. It takes away the fun.
It's disappointing, but I can't say that I'm surprised, only because the first game came out 2 years ago or so, and so to quickly turn around and put out a proper sequel to it like this year almost would have been like insane to me, especially if they wanted to put the same care and attention to detail and emotional storytelling and game mechanics that they did with that first game. This isn't like a Call of Duty franchise. This isn't like, Assassin's Creed or wherever, where they can do that. What Insomniac is doing with the Spider-Man games is on par with like Naughty Dog, Santa Monica, and stuff like that. So the fact that this is a DLC makes sense. They've probably been working on this for, since before the first Spider-Man game launched. And so it's disappointing to kind of sell people on your and a little deceptive to sell your system on a piece of DLC content, but I think if people are already going to get the PS5, then this is a nice little added bonus. And the other thing I'm unclear about is the game, do you have to rebuy the game just to get the DLC on PS5? And is the PS5 is Spider-Man Miles Morales exclusively PS5 DLC content? Or if I just have a PS4 and Spider-Man, can I get it on there as well? And so there's a little, I'm a little unsure, and maybe it's just because I haven't read up enough on it, but it just seems like a little bit of, false advertising right out the gate, which I don't necessarily like, but I think Sony realized that, which is why they clarified their statements.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they did it literally the next day,
Okay, so got a super chat coming. Thank you so much. Roboto Studios said Insomniac Games themselves confirmed Miles Morales is a standalone game. Hell yeah. So while you were just talking, I did a Google search on Twitter. Someone responded to one of their tweets about it. And the question they asked was, so is it a remaster? Seeing reports that it's a new content for Spider-Man 4 PS4 remaster. Insomniac Games replied, it's a standalone game. So their official Twitter responded to someone asking, is it a standalone game, saying it is a standalone game.
Well, that to me is weird, because then why would Sony clarify statements saying, like, this is like, I'm not just pulling this out of my ass, like, this came from IGN, this came from legitimate news sources saying that Sony clarified their statement saying that no, this is going to be like DLC. So I have no idea then what this is. So I guess it is a new game.
I'm guessing it's probably going to be comparable to Lost Legacy.
That's kind of what
it's essentially the same game engine. The game mechanics are essentially the same, but we're taking a side character from the main game, putting it in this go. And so it's a spin-off continuation. It's not as big of a game. That's kind of what I was quickly reading. So it's weird that they didn't clarify all of this in the presentation. It's weird that they didn't say, hey, this is a standalone game. It's not as expansive. And it's even saying like it's only partially whatever they would need to do. It's weird to kind of announce something, kind of not announce it at the same time. I'm glad we're getting it.
No, for sure. Like I'm excited for the game regardless. But I see Connor McCaffrey in the chat. He's saying it isn't DLC; it's DLC style content, but it is being sold as a standalone. So that's similar to Lost Legacy. Right. I believe there was an Infamous game that did the same. It was like a Festival of Blood or something like that. It wasn't a full game, but it was like standalone, like own thing. So if it's like that, that's fine. So.
All right, moving right along. We don't have too much to say about this, but I guess it was confirmed this week that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2 is in pre-production or production. I don't know how you say that with an animated film, which means that Miles Morales is having quite a good week. To me, there's not really much to say here because we already knew this. They announced the release date. So whether they kind of start production now, kind of start it later, They already said, we're doing this. It's happening. So it's really more of a confirmation that they're back to work, even though we're, sort of in quarantine. But did you have anything to add on to that one? It's just something to kind of acknowledge from my perspective.
Yeah, really excited about it. Obviously it got pushed back. I believe it got pushed back. And so like that's a little disappointing, but again, give them all the time in the world to make this. I did small little anecdote. I spoke with Daniel Pemberton, who did the music for the first one way early this year, like before Birds of Prey came out, because he did the score to that film. And he was talking about just like the stuff that Lord and Miller and everyone have in store for this film is just it's nutty and like it's bold and it's ambitious and stuff like that. And he was as a fan of the film, he was really excited, just like reading about the plot points and stuff that they're going to hit on in that movie, because he was kind of like us. He's like, how do you make a Spider-Verse sequel work and have it live up to the greatness of the original? And he said that they've cracked it. They found a really solid joint. So that gives me hope, and that made me more excited then. And just knowing that they're going back to work on it now, I'm very much excited for it.
Right, and I mean, they kind of have so much trust for me and credibility that until they really have a big fumble that I see, man, Lord and Miller, this whole crew of people have a lot of freedom with me. And that's what's one of the interesting things is Lord and Miller have in a certain sense, one of the biggest fumbles of the last decade, most interesting fumbles of the last decade, but it's not even held against them because we didn't see it.
Well, it's not. I wouldn't even consider it. I don't even think it was a fumble. And, in my
you don't
mind,
even know.
Right.
It's a thing that could potentially, to Kathleen Kennedy, it was a fumble bad enough that we have to fire them. But since none of us have seen whatever it was, it still has this kind of a legendary allure to it that makes it so like we don't hold it against them at all. It's like, Kathleen Kennedy, she's the worst.
Yeah, no, it's a weird situation because having seen Solo and just having not really enjoying that film and finding it incredibly just unremarkable, and I mean it's nothing to me. It's just a nothing piece of entertainment. Like, I would have been curious to see just what their version was, They clearly were doing something interesting. And I don't know how much of that film was them, how much of it wasn't. I mean, it felt like a Ron Howard movie. Yep. So I assume that most of it was Ron Howard. So in
the movie that we saw, I mean, there wasn't really any Lord and Miller in there.
I don't think I saw any Lord and Miller in there. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Phoebe Waller-Bridges, but even that doesn't feel like Lord and Miller. Lord and Miller they're witty. They wouldn't put a character like L3 in there and write her the way they did unless they were trying to be
just too on the nose. It was just too straightforward for kind of what they do.
Right. So, it's weird.
But all that to say, if you look at everything else besides that, and we can't even look at that. They just have a great track record, in which case, whatever they're working on, I'm interested in. They are still continue to be one of these voices that you're just curious no matter what they're doing. Kind of in their own sense, kind of like a Christopher Nolan. Totally different sense, but same kind of like they have just such a wit and intelligence to what they do that I want to see whatever they're working on.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I like about them is that while, I mean, first of all, they only work on, when it comes to the Spider-Verse movies, they're only producers, and I think they work on the story. They're not directing or screenwriting it. I believe. I could be wrong on that. So, like, if they bring back the same guys who directed the first Spider-Verse, who have the same passion, like, I think it was Peter Ramsey, I forget the other two guys' names, but I just remember Peter Ramsey. And if they bring back those guys and they bring back the same passion and basically bring back the same team and have this amazing story and vision together, I think we're going to be in store for another great adventure. And to be honest, these movies excite me probably more than the MCU Spider-Man stuff, because it's different. It's fresh. There's a new voice in there. They're not tied to a cinematic universe or whatnot. They can go crazy. They can do outlandish things that, fans only speculate on the internet about. And, like, we're just like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if, like, Spider-Man did this? And they can do that in animated form.
Yes. And I to me, that's the most comic booky The
Yeah,
original one, most comic book movie of all time, because it's just so
absolutely.
weird, and there's so many, like, both they came up with a new visual style for it that feels like a comic book brought to life,
Right.
and then of course just how weird it gets. That I just don't know how you could do that live action. People are like, would you like to see a Spider-Verse live action movie?
No.
No, and I don't think live action gives something more credibility that I need to see that. Like, there's nothing
No.
added by making it live action.
No.
They're able to get away with so much weird stuff in, like, Spider-Ham, Spider Noir, because it's animated.
Well, yeah, animation offers you the outlet to exaggerate, to have style, and to do stuff like this. I mean, that's part of what animation is, and so like it lends itself to being a great comic book movie. But like, just, Spider-Verse is one of the best comic book movies. Period.
Yep.
Not one of the best I mean, it's one of the best animated movies, but not one of the best animated comic book movies. Not one of the best, whatever. It's just flat out one of the best comic book movies, and it doesn't matter that it's in the medium of animation. And I think, the sooner I think a lot of people accept that, but the sooner more people start to accept that, I think the better off we'll be in the long run.
Yes, indeed. And all right, moving right along, talk on a quick one on this one. Kenneth Brannagh, who is currently on the press tour for Artemis Fowl, stated in one of these interviews that he wants to do an animated Shakespeare film, which, if you don't know,
Yeah.
He established himself all throughout the 90s as kind of just like this powerhouse of Shakespeare translations. Like, that's where he put himself on the map of just like doing a string of Shakespeare movies that were all well received, indifferent from each other, different types. It was tragedies, it was the comedies. So my sister was really into theater back in the day, and therefore I watched Much Ado About Nothing all of the time. And so then the idea that after he's done almost every genre over the last 20 years, that he's like, I want to get back to Shakespeare and do one animated.
Mm-hmm.
That just immediately has me going, oh, well, that sounds like fun.
Well, again, similar to what we were talking about with Spider-Verse and being able to exaggerate and be theatrical with it, I think an animated Shakespeare film would be really interesting, and especially with Brannag's knack for world building and visuals. That like in like him not having done an animated format, being able to try something new, take what he knows and go to a new medium and do something different with a genre and a story that he's overly familiar with. I think sounds like something really interesting. I did watch part of that interview. It was over at Collider, I believe. Mm-hmm. And he was I believe Frosty asked him, what Shakespeare play would you want to adapt? And he was thinking Summer Night's Dream or something like that, Midsummer Night's Dream. And I was like, and before he even said that, I was like, oh, it's got to be Midsummer Night's Dream, because that's perfect for an animated format. It's got all the colors, it's got all like the lore, the magic, like that would be perfect if he was able to adapt that into an animated format. I think it'd be great. It'd be really cool to see. So I wonder which studio would be willing to front the money for that. I mean, would Disney be interested in something like that? I mean, he has a great working relationship with them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the tricky part of it's one of those ones that theater kids and everything, like, it sounds like a great idea to cinephiles. It sounds like a great idea to Shakespeare fans of him. But then there's that other side to it of how much money can it make? What's the budget do you set for something like that to be able to do it right? And that's what I don't know. Yeah. And so that's the tricky part in it. But Midsummer Night's Dream is one of the ones that my sister acted in. So then she would be very excited to learn about all of that. So we will find out what man, if that plays out, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it'd be great. Yeah,
exist much along the same lines that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a thing that's like, this is incredible that this exists. What's the version of that for Shakespeare and cinema? Kenneth Branagh animated Shakespeare movie.
Yeah.
That sounds very, very cool.
But before we move away from Sir Brannagh here, I know there have been people in the chat asking about Artemis Fowl, and then someone even said, how did Kenneth Branagh go from a 100% movie on Rotten Tomatoes to a 13% movie on Rotten Tomatoes? And that's a great question.
So that's what I'll be watching once we finish this. I'll be going to check this one out just to see how good this one is. But so it's interesting to know what went wrong because Kenneth Branagh, if you look at the movies he's directed, like he kind of has this very big up and down of like a lot of great, fantastic, solid films, and then he's got these weird ones in there that.
I think he maybe I'm definitely in the minority on this one, but I think he made the best Thor film. And I would have been curious to see what he would have done with 2 more Thor movies, kind of in a similar Shakespearean vibe, because those characters are very, they're rooted in classic mythology, but obviously updated in like a modern comic book thing. So I would have been curious to see what he would have done with that going forward. But I don't know. I mean, as someone who's seen Artemis Fowl, I think it's a bad movie. I don't think it's the abysmal trash some people are claiming it to be. Like I guarantee you, most of you have seen worse movies in your lifetime,
right? And
at least visually and from a world building perspective, it's good. Like there's no denying. Like Brannagh has like a natural, instinct for that sort of thing, but it's incomprehensible, which is the real problem with it. So, I mean, like,
I'll figure out if I can comprehend it in about 90 minutes. I'll be checking that one out. I'm going to move on to a subject. So, over the last couple of weeks, a ton of people have asked me one question on repeat in my direct messages and on Twitter, and it's, what did I think about Space Force? So if you don't know what Space Force is, essentially the creator of the American version of The Office and the star of the American version of The Office, Steve Carell, teamed up to do a show based off of the Trump-announced Space Force, and it debuted on Netflix a couple of weeks back. I did actually check it out. I binged the whole thing the day that it debuted with my wife, and I did not like it at all. And so people have been asking me, hey, what did you think about it? I didn't like it at all. And why didn't you review it? Because I didn't like it at all. And I don't want to put it on a review edited just to kind of trash something. But people keep asking me, so I feel like I do need to cover it. And so wanted to kind of give my quick thoughts on it in general, that they took something that's a concept that just feels like in it, just material ripe to crack jokes about. The idea of a Space Force is inherently kind of funny. And when you combine that with, what if you got the creative team for The Office to tackle Trump's Space Force, that's inherently a really amusing concept, funny idea. And then they got a fantastic cast, of course, with Steve Carell, John Malkovich, and everyone else. Just a ton of fun people on this show. And I had a funny vibe right from the get-go that I didn't think it was going to work. It sounds great in a pitch, like Office does Space Force, amazing. And then as soon as we moved past that, I went, I just have a feeling that this is not going to work for me. It's going to feel too much like they're taking too many easy ways, too many cheap jokes, easy way out. And I watched the first episode and I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. Like, I don't know where they're going with this, but yeah, they're going for a lot of cheap jokes. And then as the season went along, I felt like I liked each episode less and less and less, and it lost its focus and it got so scrambled. So one of the big problems I had with it was continually, it just made observations rather than jokes. So they would do things kind of like, let's find out what the president is up to. Let's check Twitter. And that would be the whole joke. There'd be no punchline. It would be a setup, which is Trump uses Twitter, which there's plenty of jokes to be made about that. But they're also jokes that late night television has been making for 4 years straight now. And so they feel so dated. And the whole thing kind of had that vibe to me of they would set up a joke, but not make, like, they wouldn't actually do anything beyond a simple observation about how ridiculous, silly, strange everything is involving this whole Space Force thing. And then they also had a bunch of plot lines that just made no sense. Like they established that his wife is in prison. And it prologue to the show, she's there with them, and then she's in prison. And we're never really elaborating on where that's going. They dedicate a whole episode to them having an open marriage. And you're like, what is this? What are we doing right now? And every time that the daughter character feels like she's in a different show. Tonally, it's like a teenage dramedy whenever she's there. And then we go to Space Force, and it's a wacky screwball comedy with chimps in space killing the dog in space and stuff like that. And so I just like it tonally, it didn't know what it wanted to be. Directionally, it didn't know what it wanted to be. And a lot of the jokes for me just simply absolutely did not land because they weren't jokes. They were setups. And like as soon as we finished it, we went back and started rewatching Parks and Rec. And immediately it was like, this is wit. This is like there's a setup and there's a clever twist on the idea. And I felt like a whole season of Space Force, and there was never a clever twist on any of this. And that's to me just felt like a really lazy way to tackle something. And that's why I always had that vibe of like, this feels too easy for them. And they're going to lean into all of the cheap jokes, the obvious stuff that late night television has already been doing for years. And so I got to the end of it and I went, man, that was one of the most disappointing things I can imagine. We kept watching it, waiting for it to get funny, waiting for it to get good. And it never did. It just kept at the same level of like, what are they doing? Why are they heading in these directions? Why are they going? And so I tweeted this out as soon as that night. It was like, wow, that was the worst binge show that I've ever finished. Because there's plenty of things I've started and didn't finish. This one we just happened to binge the whole thing and finished it. Both my wife and I were like, that was not good. We did not like it at all. And then on Twitter, a bunch of people loved it. And then
Really?
I talked to a bunch of my friends, like Al Seward, talked to him on the phone a couple weeks ago, and he really dug it. I talked to several other people. They really dug it. And so it seems like one of these shows that it just polarized people. Like me and a bunch of others were like, I didn't get that at all. Like,
Yeah.
I just think that they took the lazy way out, and it did not work. So disappointed. A bunch of other people like, I thought it was hilarious. So that's my take on it. Griffin, what have you heard from people in general? Because you haven't watched it.
Yeah, no, I haven't watched it. I think the friend or roommate or someone had it on the TV at some point in time, and I watched like, not really, just like kind of tangentially watched like I don't know, maybe like 15 minutes of it, and I was like, oh no, this is not good. This is very bad. It's very just. They went for low-hanging fruit. They didn't try very hard. They just none of it was funny. It thought it was way funnier than it was, and I guess I was just kind of shocked coming from Greg Daniels and Steve Carell. Like Steve Carell is a creator of this show. It's not even like they just got him to star in it. Like he's like he collaborated with Greg Daniels to make it, and like we know Steve Carell is more talented than that. We know Greg Daniels is more talented than that. The whole premise, like, I don't know. I guess maybe there's a way to do it and to do it witty, but to me it's too obvious of a joke to be funny in the long run. Like, yes. The fact that there is a space force in our country, in the actual branch of a military, is a farce. Like, it's ridiculous. Yeah. It's moronic. But like, I don't know. You can't do that. We all know it's stupid. So like, what's the point of making a 10-episode comedy series about it?
I think that's kind of the problem, is that there's nothing to actually satirize. And so you're left with just like, because we don't know anything about it. It's not like anything's happening because there's nothing to happen. And so then they're just having to like concoct scenarios and try and do satire while doing screwball comedy, while trying to make it grounded and have family elements to it. And so when you put it all together, it just did not mix for me at all. And I wonder even how part of what they're so good at is improv. They're great at getting funny people and having them sit there
that's true.
And just riff. And so you cut to like the in-camera documentary aspects of Parks and Rec or The Office, and you have these funny people just say 10 takes of hilarious things, and then they pick the funniest one, and they rewrite it totally in the editing process. And if you have the DVDs of The Office seasons, they have 10, 12, 15 minutes of deleted scenes for every single episode, and they're all just as funny as what you see in the episode itself.
Yeah.
And then with Space Force, it's so scripted. It's so
it's overly scripted. There is nothing natural about it. There's nothing like it. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, sorry.
But yeah, I think that's where I think they lost some of it, is what they're really actually good at is that side to it, the organic comedy. And that's even Steve Carell with his background. He was on The Daily Show for years, and then That's what's not present here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the problem with all. Like I just think they took something that was too obvious, that it seems really funny as a concept until you try to map it out. What do you satirize? It's not really doing anything. We don't know anything about it. And so then it just turns into kind of a lazy series. There's even a Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez character in it. Very clearly, it's her. I
heard about that.
And so then, but there's not like they don't want to actually offend her. They don't actually want to alienate her or go after her. So the joke is that she speaks with her cadence in her voice. That's how you know it's her. But other than that, she's actually saying kind of more reasonable things than the actual Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The satirized version of her seems a little bit more grounded in reality than the one that we have in real life. And so they couldn't actually, there's no bite to it. They're not even calling out, they're not even saying the name Trump in it, in which case it's satire without the bite. It's comedy without the wit. And then it's people that are great at improvised comedy doing scripted comedy. And so for me, I just didn't like it. And even if you did, I don't want to take that away from you, but I can't say that it's something that I actually enjoyed myself. So unfortunately, that's we got a super chat come in. Okie dokie. Danny K Review says, Rue, marry, kill between Sam Jackson, Leo DiCaprio, and Emma Stone. I will marry Emma Stone. I will kill Leonardo DiCaprio, and Samuel Jackson, I guess, are having a one-night stand. How about you, Griffin?
Wow, that's...
It was very easy to decide for me. It was very straightforward for me.
Yeah. Maybe I go with you? I don't know. I don't think that... Yeah, sure, I'll say the same thing. Yeah.
All right. I'm glad we got that covered. That was important stuff that I'm sure people wanted to have covered. But
I think it's the most important topic we've discussed today. Honestly.
Yeah, we could probably spend a long time on that particular subject. All right, moving along on our topics of the day. Nicholas, did you have any final thoughts on Space Force?
Oh, on Space Force? I don't know. I miss the days of like the what do you call it? The Mel Brooks like clever satire. Like this could have been a Mel Brooks style like parody, like a Blazing Saddles, like a Spaceballs, whatever. It could have been that quality, or even like the like the Naked Gun.
I watched your first Naked Gun about a month ago, and it was like it holds up. It's really funny.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very good in its dry humor.
Yeah, no, I can't remember. Is that the one where they have the guy who plays Bush Sr. in it, or is that the second one?
The second one, I believe, is where Bush becomes like a major character in it. I think he's in both of them. I don't remember the timeline exactly on it, but Bush is a major character in the second one.
Right. Well, I just look at those movies and I'm like, well, they did it and they did it funny. I mean, granted, it's not as on the nose as Space Force, but like, I don't know. I guess to close out, I'll just say Space Force just feels like a gag that would be in a more clever like parody film, not like a series centered around itself, you know.
And as one final little context, the first season of The Office was very different from the rest of the show. They recalibrated after season one. Season one of Parks and Rec is one of the weakest seasons of Parks and Rec, and they recalibrated. So there's always that chance that
there's
takes them a while to find their footing, but it was a major disappointment for me that I think like you said, there's just, for some reason comedy is lacking a lot of its bite these days, and maybe some of it's just the particular political climate that we're in right now, that people don't know how to do comedy without fear of stepping on other people's toes. I don't know if it's just that reality is so much a farce itself. We're in such a weird time period that it's difficult to satirize it because it's just so kind of an odd time, and how much of it is that just people are just don't know how to write a good joke right now. But like in Hot Shots Part 2, they have full-blown Saddam Hussein is the villain in it, and he's like out sunbathing at the end of the movie, and they drop a bomb on him that he catches. I mean, it's like they just went for it, like overt in your face. In the first Naked Gun, I mean, it's the Queen of England is in it, and he's like sexually harassing her on accident because it's a screwball comedy, and you just don't have that right. Like they couldn't even say Trump in Space Force. And I think you lose something when you're just like, you're trying to satirize something, but you've got kitty gloves on at the same time. It just does not work. All right, let's move along. Yeah. Next subject. So Viggo Mortensen and Peter Farrelly, the team behind Best Picture winner, The Green Book from a year and a half ago, reteaming for another film. Let me see what the name, double check, make sure I got my name on this one. The Greatest Beer Run Ever, a true story of friendship stronger than war. Now, I'm not familiar with the book that this is based off of. I've heard Film Twitter had some very strong opinions about this one. But, I mean, if you just think business-wise, if you think acclaim-wise, it makes sense that these two would team back up. They won Best Picture. They got even more nominations. And this is like the guy that did Dumb and Dumber wins Best Picture, working with this guy over here. It's a no-brainer that the business itself is going to be like, hey, let's put these guys back together to try and recreate the magic that we formed here.
Right.
You know, there's all kinds of like, should it have won Best Picture? No. Seems like most people say no, it should not. It was just the way all the like it just happened to win because it fell like in the cracks between split audiences. Should have won. Most people say no. And then there's the scandal over is like, is this a bad movie with a bad message? That feels more like kind of a film Twitter discussion more so than if you're out on the street. People are like, oh, it was a great movie that had a solid message to it. And I get the criticisms. I get where people are coming from. You need the counterbalance to this one-sided narrative about it. The flip side, like I said, a lot of people really did enjoy the movie. So it seems obvious that they would reteam. There's like I saw a few tweets that are like, why are they doing this? I don't understand why. You don't? Because if you don't know why they're doing this, you must be in a really small bubble if you don't get this.
Yeah, no, I mean, like it makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of accounts out there of like some of the stuff Peter Farrelly did on set for years. Like I don't even know if this is true anymore. I just remember reading it, but like pulling out his genitals or whatever to make a joke or something like that. Like there was just like really weird reports that came out. Obviously when Green Book was doing its Oscar campaign, because that's what everyone wants to, smear people who are, potentially front runners and whatnot. And so like it's just, I don't know. I mean, I'm conflicted because I like some of Peter Farrelly's comedies, like earlier comedy, like Dumb and Dumber is probably one of the best comedies ever, just period. Like it's great. Right. Viggo Mortensen is a world-class actor, but if it means that we're going to get something like Green Book again, I don't know if this really excites me. I don't hate Green Book. I think it's perfectly fine. It's not an Academy Award winning film.
It is a winner.
I mean, it is a winner. Is it worthy of it? I don't think so. Not at all. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it makes sense.
Me, like a '90s Best Picture nominee. It felt like the sort of movie that was very common to be in the, Driving Miss Daisy, Forrest Gump. That's that era of Best Picture winner, which also would explain why it kind of appealed to a large group of the audience that kind of reminded them of days past where it's like, oh yeah, it's tackling issues, it's kind of funny, it's got drama, it's got all that kind of stuff. It's schmaltzy. But it has that vibe to it, and I think that's why it resonated with a lot of people. I'm fascinated by the fact that it resonated so much with Academy voters.
Wow!
But film Twitter is it like that's what I always try and figure out. Like I haven't figured out the difference between these two categories. Like I can see the difference, but I don't know what it is that they see the world so differently.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the Academy is largely older, and they're a little out of touch when it comes to cinema today. I mean, they just and maybe we should cover this, but they just announced earlier today that they are making a full 10-slot Best Picture lineup. Like there will be a permanent 10 slot. It won't be maybe 8 one year and 7 the next. They've announced that they're going to do 10 now, and so and I think it's part of like a diversity initiative. So they're working with some of the people that they have in there now, like Ava DuVernay, she was appointed to the board of governors or something. I think that like that, who is one of the leading bodies of the academy, I believe. And so, they are taking small steps, but there is like still so much work that needs to be done in order to get that body of voters, up to date. Otherwise, because like we don't realistically, we don't want another film like Green Book winning Best Picture. We don't want another instance like that. We don't want,
And it feels like, to kind of what you just said, they're out of touch. They see the criticisms like, oh, Oscar's so white, and then they that's where it wins. It's like, look, oh yeah, this one feels like a Best Picture to us, and it feels like throwing a bone, but it doesn't. None of it feels authentic. It feels like people trying to read the tea leaves, and once again, and people in the comments, if you're wondering my take on Green Book, I enjoyed the film. I had a solid time watching the film. I wouldn't have had it as my Best Picture. I don't remember what the other nominees were that year, but that's not the one that I would have picked. But I would only. The movie worked for me.
Well, that's the thing. It's like if out of all the movies that tackled race and social injustice that year, you had Black Klansman, which was a fucking. Or, excuse me, I'm sorry.
My mother listened to this.
It was an effing, a sledgehammer from Spike Lee. I love that movie. There was crap. What am I thinking? I'm blanking on it. Well, there was Black Panther even. Like you had all these movies that were like they had interesting things to say about the current state of race, and then you have Green Book, which it solves racism by having a car ride and a guy who likes to stuff his face full of food. I mean, Vigo Mortensen eats so much food in that movie.
The Brad Pitt model of acting.
Right, of course. That's true. And it's just like, really? Like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, come on.
So, yeah, but the fact that they're reuniting, it makes sense on a business level. It makes sense on a reward level. Man understands why they would want to do that. Clearly, it was good for both of them. I guess we'll see what comes of it. Moving along to our next subject at hand. This week, it was announced who will be working on Evil Dead 4. I guess the title they're saying, Bruce Campbell said, is going to be Evil Dead Now. Apparently, Ash is not in the movie, and Lee Cronin, who's the writer and director of last year's The Hole in the Ground, has been handpicked by Sam Raimi himself to direct the project. It still feels a little bit unclear. It's like it from the language on the Collider article, who I would trust is a good source on this. It's the fourth Evil Dead film, which that would mean ties back to the original Sam Raimi. Let's continue that, not a continuation of the Fede Alvarez Evil Dead that came out 9-ish years ago. But it says that it's ashless, which in and of itself is kind of weird to call it Evil Dead. And have you seen this director's work?
I have not. I don't think.
I haven't either. So that's interesting to me that it's someone that neither one of us seems. This one isn't even on my radar. But Sam Raimi handpicked him. That's a good sign, I would think. But it's tough to have too much to say about it because it just feels a little. They've been talking about doing this Evil Dead 4 for 25 years, and then we got Ash vs. the Evil Dead, which seemed like this is the definitive version we're going to get of a continuation of Ash as this TV show. So then we say, no, this is Evil Dead Now. This is the actual movie. Yeah. But Ash isn't in it. It's like, okay, what are we doing? I understand what this is.
Yeah.
So cool, I guess. I need a lot more information in the trailer to get excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, the prospect of a new Evil Dead movie, of course, excites me just because, like, I love that franchise and that film. I mean, honestly, I think Evil Dead 2 might be one of, like, top 3 favorite horror films of all time. I just absolutely adore that movie. And Army of Darkness is a great way to take a sequel, different but still fun. And the remake is amazing. So, like, if it's continuing on that trajectory of, like, they're each film is like kind of different, but like it still feels like an Evil Dead movie, and like it's still a great time. Even though Sam Raimi isn't directing, I think it could be good. I mean, the fact that Sam Raimi hand selected this guy gives me hope for it. I don't know why Fede Alvarez didn't just come back and do
Right.
another one, even if it's not a sequel to his original film. So I mean, I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I really don't have too much to say on this though.
Yeah. So Ziggy asks, what's the best Evil Dead movie? You would say Evil Dead 2?
Yeah, Evil Dead 2.
I would say Evil Dead 2. I think it's the best mix of both being a horror movie that has nastiness, as well as it's in a lot of ways to me peak Sam Raimi because it's the horror guy, and then it is so his Three Stooges influences, his weirdness, his wackiness, all of it combined into one. It's like you can interpret the movie a number of different ways as just a remake, or you could say that the first 10 minutes is a mostly retelling of the first film.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that to me, I think, is the one that balances it all the best, to where Army of Darkness is a very interesting, different way to do a sequel. But it lost, I think, some of the charm, and some of I think they want to try to do a few things they really couldn't do that just don't age all that well with the special effects and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, I agree with you. It's definitely not as good as Evil Dead 2. It's a weird movie. Army of Darkness is just bizarre, but like it's also just kind of an interesting way to take a sequel. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Evil Dead 2 just has that perfect blend of like Sam Raimi-isms. He's not. I mean, there's a lot of them in there, but it doesn't feel like overcooked. Whereas like a movie like Drag Me to Hell, I love the movie, but like he goes overboard in that film, like so much so that I think it becomes a detriment at times. But I still love that movie. It's these movies all kind of rely on whether or not you enjoy Sam Raimi's style. It's like, do you get what he's going for? Because if you don't get Sam Raimi, you could sit down and watch this movie and be like, what the hell did I just see? Like this is stupid.
But that's a lot where people go back and watch his first two Spider-Man movies that people grew up watching, that understand Sam Raimi's sensibilities and his humor and his influences. And so you grew up on that, so you just grew to love them. If you're born in the year 2002, and so you checked out Spider-Man 2002 and Spider-Man 2 in the year after Spider-Man Homecoming came out, you're like, what? This is goofy. This is corny. Why is people doing flips in the air? And you go, oh, because that's who Sam Raimi is. And so if you came into the perspective of having watched Army of Darkness for 10 years like I did, and then you see his movies, it all makes a lot more sense when you understand him as a person first.
Yeah.
All right, moving along on here. So, since the last time we did one of these podcasts, HBO Max premiered. I guess it was about 2 weeks ago. And the initial buzz from people was really positive in the first week because they had deals with Warner Brothers and Turner Classic Movies and the Criterion Collection. And so there was really nice archive on there that kind of distinguished itself from a whole bunch of the other streaming services. And then week number 2 happened. Actually, day number 2 happened, and immediately they started pulling stuff from it. And it was released this week that they're going to pull all of their DC content starting like July 1st or something like that. And they marketed HBO Max as being the DC platform that has the DCEU movies. And so I don't know exactly what they were thinking in their release schedule with where they have some of these, the way they marketed, the way they promoted all of this. But it seems like a really shaky start to not have a bunch of high-profile exclusives that capture people's attention, market it based off of having Wonder Woman, Justice League, especially Justice League, and then 2 weeks into your launch announcing, oh yeah, actually these are going to be pulled in a few weeks. That seems like a really bad move. And in fact, to make a really specific example, 1 week after it launched, I put out a video, what to watch on HBO Max. One of the movies I said to check out in it was True Lies. The day that I posted the video, 1 week after the service premiered, they pulled True Lies from the service.
I really wanted to. I haven't gotten a chance to watch it on there, and I was so burned.
Yeah. Like I used my platform to promote their service to be like, hey guys, check it out. Here's the cool stuff on there. And literally the day I posted the video, someone messaged me, hey man, I went to go watch True Lies and it's not on there. And I looked into it. Oh, yep, they did. They pulled it. They pulled it 1 week into the launch. Man, they have really dramatically got to rethink what they're doing with this thing, because they're going to burn so many bridges.
Yeah.
With their, especially if you don't communicate what you're doing. Like if what they said was, yeah, all the DCEU movies that aren't currently on there will be on there next month, and all of these movies over here that aren't there, they'll be on there next month, and we'll just cycle through the months. And so you are losing it for a month, but you'll get it back. You could get some trust with people, but when all you hear is, wait, I just signed up to check out these movies and they're already leaving. What? Especially
weird. Yeah.
Because they don't have strong exclusives that you're confident. Like over there on Netflix, you know that all this original content, 85% of it might be garbage, but then you have The Five Bloods, you have Stranger Things, you have Extraction, you have some premium exclusives with big name stars. What does HBO Max have? They have Love Life, which my wife and I are watching. It's got Anna Kendrick, so therefore we checked it out. But like, it's not like we probably would have signed up for the service just for that one. But that's just because my wife obsesses over like 2 actresses at a time, and Anna Kendrick has been that actress for about 5 years now. And then Looney Tunes, which like I haven't even checked out Looney Tunes, and I have kids. And so they just don't have stuff that hooks people, that draws them in to click. Like, I want to pay $15. I want to play more than I'm paying for Netflix for this service, and the stuff might disappear. Whatever I'm signing up for, it could be gone in 2 weeks. So much so that I used my platform to say, check it out. This awesome James Cameron action movie. Finally, you can see it in 1080 because it's not on Blu-ray. Check it out on HBO. No, just kidding. It's already gone.
It's already gone. Yeah. It's really, I don't think it builds goodwill with your customers if right off the bat you're like, listen, we've got the entire DC catalog, and then like a month later, okay, Batman's leaving, like 89 Batman, Wonder Woman's leaving, Aquaman's leaving, like blah 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 blah. I don't know which DC films. I'm just using those for example.
I think Shazam is staying. Maybe Joker.
Oh, thank like God, Shazam and Joker.
2 of them are staying.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what I'd do if Joker left HBO Max. I think I'd have to, revoke my membership to the HBO Max Club. But no. It just, why would you build your entire platform around this is going to be the home of our properties like this, and then remove them? I understand, because Disney Plus, it's the home of all the MCU movies. It's the home of all the Star Wars movies.
Yep.
I understand that, sometimes like 1 or 2 of those films cycles out and it goes to like Netflix or it goes to Amazon Prime. I mean, I don't know if Disney Plus will eventually just have all of them at once, but I guess I don't understand why Warner Brothers doesn't do that, especially when they own all these properties. Like, they should do whatever they can to ensure that every single one of the DC films is on that streaming service, because for a lot of people, that's why they signed up. Now, I'm obviously for myself, I kind of just am more interested in their entire catalog of content, because to me, Warner Brothers is the king of content. Like, it's just like some of their classic film selection is probably the most impressive that I've seen on a streaming platform outside of the Criterion Collection, which, I guess it's not really saying anything considering most streaming services don't have a lot of classic films on them. But my God, I mean, you can watch all of like these like classic film noir, like The Maltese Falcon, The Big Sleep, stuff like that. And so, like, yes, there is stuff still there. Like, there are great films still on there. There are great shows still on there. You can binge Friends until the cows come home. And yes, I myself have been watching Looney Tunes, and I've really been enjoying that. I've been watching the new ones specifically, and I think they did a really great job of recapturing the spirit of the original cartoon. So kudos to them for doing that. But when given how big comic books are and fandom is, and DC is in particular, you'd think that they would try a little harder to make sure that those movies are going to be there for, I don't know, at least like half a year, right? At least 6 months. And then, okay, maybe we start taking ones out here and there and cycling through. It just, again, doesn't build goodwill with your customers. and it's disappointing to see that.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be able to trust the service to stay connected to it.
Right.
Like I have to believe that these things I signed up for are going to be there. I have to, and when I don't know what's coming and I don't know when things are leaving, it just feels like, all right, well, why would I sign up for this one? Because I just have no idea what I'm going to have.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't think that's a good way to do things.
No, I agree. And Dorito Chip Gamer in here is saying something interesting. He's like, it's fine if you remove them, but don't market them then. Market your other properties,
Right.
like Die Hard, Aliens, The Predator, Braveheart classics, Citizen Kane, Casablanca, Wizard of Oz. I really think what they should be doing is, I completely agree with him, and one of the things that I've said for the longest time is they should be marketing themselves as, look at our legacy content. You know Warner Brothers as being the studio that brought you this, The Wizard of Oz, one of the most beloved films of all time and classic movie. Market yourself on that. And if you sell people on that, you'll get a lot of people coming in to watch those films just because of the Warner Brothers name alone.
Yeah. So hopefully they can figure out what they're doing. And, I think that what I don't get about launching a competitive service like that at this point in time is that you have examples to follow. Yeah. There's not an excuse for like, oh, we didn't know this would look bad for us. Oh, we didn't know we needed exclusives. Oh, like Netflix was thinking we need exclusives a long time ago.
Oh yeah.
And so by the time HBO jumps into it, they're like, oh yeah, but we have the HBO stuff. Like, oh, that's not the same thing. That's not like, you can't market yourself as a new thing and then rely on the fact that you have exclusives from the old thing. That's becomes archive content at that point in time. And so I just think that they really messed this thing up. And I think this is the example of why what we're, almost all of us are frustrated with the streaming model now, that everyone is trying to rip off Netflix and they're doing a bad job of it. Now Netflix has their own problems and their debt issues, and they don't own archives, and so then they're having to cut deals with people, and all those people want to make their own but none of them are doing as good of a job, I think, as Netflix of being ahead of the curve. And here we have HBO jumping into it very late and not being up to speed and just making some dumb mistakes right out of the game. All right, moving on. I want to talk real quick on this one. No spoilers involved in this discussion, but there were some pretty significant Bond leaks that came out this week. You actually, I was hoping I would avoid them entirely. Hopped on Twitter and someone just tweeted out, and I was like, "Oh, what is this person? Oh no, I wish I hadn't read that." Mm-hmm. And then I did the classic Twitter mistake of I respond like, "Dude, spoilers!" And that tweet started showing up in a bunch of my people's feed, and so I was like, "Oh crap! Now I'm responsible for no." Oh man,
yeah,
stuff out there.
Yeah,
how many more of these are going to happen with all of the delays? Are we going to have a good number of these kind of leaks getting out there? And if you leak anything don't post anything in the chat. If you do, I will block you.
Yeah, please don't do that for everyone else in the chat. It's unfortunate that this is happening. I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner, to be honest, just given the delay and everything. But what's really stupid about this whole thing is that it comes from the fact that a call sheet, a small selection of call sheets from when they were filming was put up for auction on eBay. Like, so it's not even like a script was leaked. It's not even like someone got their hands on the film. A call sheet. Like, it's just, it's nuts that this is sort of happening. But, I think a lot of the onus has to fall on the outlets that reported this, because this made its way into the mainstream media with the spoiler directly in the headline. Like, you saw, like, Screen Rant. I saw one of them put it directly in the headline. Not that I go to this website, but when you're scrolling for news, Fox News put it directly in the headline. And then, of course, you can't be surprised, but like all of the UK tabloids were eating this up. The Daily Mail, The Sun, I mean, the trash, tabloids that, they know their Bonds leaks and whatnot, but they're also just like have horrific journalistic integrity in it. So like, with all of these outlets putting out stuff like this, of course people were going to find out.
Yeah.
So at what point, as a journalist, do you decide not to cover it? And I'm happy to say that a lot of the more respectable outlets neglected to cover this. So thank you to those outlets that did their work and showed integrity. But because it's already out there, so many people have gotten spoiled. I mean, I got spoiled. I probably did the not so smart thing. I seeked it once I saw it was a thing. I seeked it out that way I could get ahead of the curve before I started to see stuff, and I wanted to read the full thing before I saw a snippet. And without getting too deep into the weeds here, without spoiling anything, a lot of this stuff that happens, I kind of predicted from like months ago, like just having followed this project closely. So I can't say I was really surprised by a lot of the stuff in there, but there's it's just the fact that this is happening is really tragic. I don't think it'll affect anyone's viewing experience of the film. It's just contextualizing things a little bit more, but still, it's just, come on, guys, don't spread this sort of information when the movie hasn't even come out yet.
And won't for months and months and
and
months
until Thanksgiving. That's like months away.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough for me to understand some of these major outlets that have so little concern about spoilers. And I mean, it comes into play anytime, like, there's like a new Star Wars movie, new major MCU movie. There's certain major outlets infamous for just posting spoilers in their reviews. Not random blogger guy, not random YouTuber guy that his buddy took him into the press screening. This is like top brands that everybody knows that brand name, and their movie critic guy has absolutely no respect whatsoever for average film fans or film fans in general that do not have the privilege of seeing a movie before it comes out. And so then they just like right there in their review start, with Endgame, they're just like, well, right in the 10 minutes into the movie, the main villain is killed off, and therefore it kind of takes the threat. Like, they'll just say things like that you're like, you just said something that obviously you shouldn't have said. And like, especially with some of these ones, they the studio will actively send a message, please don't spoil anything in your reviews, and then major outlets have no concern. And it's infuriating that, like, I'm just a guy in Central Texas shooting on a webcam right now, and I have 1,000 times more respect for the audience than privileged guy writing for major outlet person that just doesn't care. It's like so disconnected from the average Joe that it's infuriating. And then, just posting about leaks, who cares? We'll get clicks. We gotta report the news.
Well, that's the thing. It's they're more concerned about traffic and clicks than they are about integrity. And that doesn't just go for print or outlets as well, or print online outlets. But there are a lot of like YouTubers who will do that stuff. I think, given how out there in the media this stuff is, if someone was to cover it, I would understand. I don't think it's wrong, but like, you have a due diligence to not put the spoiler in the headline. And give the people like a big spoiler warning at the beginning of the video, or even in your article if you're writing. Don't put it in the headline. That's where I've been getting irritated with this whole thing. It's one thing to cover the spoiler, but it's another to just flat out put it in the headline. And I understand that's part of the appeal and the intrigue is what it's actually about. But that, like, you can't just do that, because then you're completely screwing over an entire section of your readers who don't want to know this. Obviously, there's people who want to know spoilers and don't really care about this sort of thing. But there's way more people that care about not reading it than don't care about it.
Right, and I think the infuriating thing is that it's like people that don't care about spoilers, whether because they see things earlier or they just don't care. It's not something that bothers them. And therefore, they impose their lack of caring on other people. Like, well, I don't care about spoilers, so what does it matter if I share things?
Yeah.
But you're
yeah.
robbing other people of something that they do value.
Right.
And if you don't care about that, that's says a lot about you. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
like it when you're just overtly just doing some of this stuff. It's just being selfish. It's just being inconsiderate, in imposing your values on others, which is not something that's generally speaking okay to do. All right, with that said, we're going to close out the audio version. We'll take some questions here on the live stream. Griffin, where can we find you on the internet?
Yeah, so you guys can head on over to the Film Speak channel. I put up my review for Artemis Fowl yesterday. I should have a review out for Defy Bloods either later today or tomorrow. Really, really love that one, so you definitely want to check out my thoughts for that. And I've got interviews with Kenneth Brannagh and Jason Isaacs up there. So, I will have one for Kenneth Brannagh out there. So if you're interested in all that, head on over to the Film Speak channel. Check it out. You can also follow me on Twitter at Griff Schiller.
So that'll do it for the audio version of this. Wherever you are listening to this, be sure to leave a review and a rating. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and keep talking movies too much. All right, we'll take some questions down below or from the chat for a little bit here. And then I need to go and watch Artemis Fowl and maybe get a review up for it today. But all right, let's see what we have in the chat.
Sean, you don't want to watch Artemis Fowl. What are you talking about? Come on.
You gotta watch stuff to be able to have a worst of the year list this year.
Oh, that's true. That's
what
true.
happened.
Yeah.
All right, kicking things off, Majestic Demon with a super chat. Thank you so much. Do you think Captain Marvel would have been received a lot better if it was a Phase 1 film? I mean, it would have made a lot less money if it was a Phase 1 film. It made a lot more money because the franchise had a lot more credibility, and so then a character that's not as well known to the mainstream was seen by a lot more people. It was the movie right before Endgame, so a lot more people watched it.
Yeah.
And I think the actual, and so in that regard, fewer people would have watched it, so I think it would have gotten less backlash. The backlash came because everyone went to go see it, even though they might not have otherwise gone to go see it, because it was just so full stream, full speed ahead Marvel mode. And then, I mean, I think the backlash is more tied to a few things in the marketing and a few quotes from Brie Larson, more so than the movie itself. Criticisms of the movie itself about the tone being inconsistent, some weird acting, I think those are all pretty valid, but there's no shortage of people that really like the movie. The people that hate it, that are like, "Argh!" That's more of a reaction to Brie Larson saying that she doesn't want to hear a 40-year-old white man reviewing A Wrinkle in Time. I mean, it's not really a reaction to I don't think. What do you think, Griffin?
Yeah, I don't know if it would have necessarily been received better, because I still think that, well, I say that, but at the same time, maybe, because you had films like Iron Man 2 fresh in your mind, which was a pretty big disappointment when you compare it to the first one, and like Captain Marvel, while it lacks any sort of like directorial stamp or trademark or anything or vision, like there's interesting enough things in there, specifically with the villain, like with the Kree, or the Skrulls and whatnot. But like, I don't know. I think it probably would have been received the same, personally. I mean, that's not taking into account the backlash or the backlash from the quotes that she made or whatever. I don't know. I probably would have been received the same. I'll lean towards that.
Red, have you seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as it gets good? Way better than anything Arrowverse has ever done. I've seen the first 12 episodes and I didn't like it, and so I haven't watched it. If I had known when it first debuted I was going to have a YouTube channel built on Marvel movies, I probably would have kept with it because it would be profitable for me. But as of right now, I don't want to rewatch 100 episodes of a TV show that I didn't really like just for the sake of doing video. And it wouldn't do you any favors either. Like, people always want me to watch it and do things like that. But if I don't like it, I don't like it. Yeah, and so there's no point in kind of watching it. I remember. Have you watched it?
Yeah, I did. I watched I think I may have watched the first 3 seasons, and I really dug it. hated the first season, but like season 2, whenever they start, like, the whole Hydra stuff happens, and it starts like kind of finding its footing and figuring out what it wants to be, and actually the as soon as it starts detaching itself from the MCU and becomes its own thing, then it really kind of starts to get good. So I think it's worth your time watching if you were interested, but like obviously there's better content out there that probably would be better served watching. But no, I dig it. I dug it for like what I saw of it. I eventually want to get around to finishing it, but it was I agree with that statement. From what I saw, it was way better than like any of the stuff past Arrow season 2 in the Arrowverse.
Kraken, hey Sean, do you think I can be successful in my movie review channel and be a known YouTube channel and be one of the best like you? I don't know. It's tough to say because you have to work really hard at it. It's not so simple as like, hey, can anyone make it? No. Like, it's not like you have to be able to put the work in. You have to be patient with it. And you just have to have certain level of on-screen talent, charisma. You have to have insightful things to say. And there's at some point in time, it has to cost you something if you want to be successful. Whether that's just time, training, getting better. Griffin has all these amazing opportunities. Part of that is that he took a huge risk and moved out to LA. And like there's all of this comes with a cost. There's always something that you have to be able to put in the effort. I'm just a guy, no background in film, journalism, never taken any formal training on video editing, any of this stuff. I'm self-taught on everything. It's my full-time career. So can you just make it happen? Of course you can. But can you specifically? I don't know, because I don't know what you're willing to put into it. It takes a lot of work to make this stuff happen.
Right. I mean, well, and it's also like, you got to factor into account like, how old you are, the kind of content you're making. Obviously, there's room to grow. You can go, if you're young enough, you can go to college and get a formal education in certain things that you want to know. If you want to study film, go to school and study film. Go to school and study journalism if you want to be a journalist and stuff like that. So it's like there's different avenues you can take. But I completely agree with you. It's not a guarantee that you'll make it, and you have to know going into this field.
Me and you started at the same time as like hundreds of, like, I mean, a ton of us.
Yeah, I mean,
the number of people that like when it comes to subscriber count, I think it's me and Reese are like the top two people. And then there's the big gap, and then you have like Austin Burke. I mean, it is tough. It's not easy to do. And there's a lot of competition, and there's only more competition as time passes.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've been doing this since 2015, and I have, a modest, like, small following. And so it's just like, and which I'm very proud of, because they're very dedicated people, and they're very engaging, and they appreciate the content that I put out, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But you just got to keep into account, you just got to keep in mind that it's like, people like Sean, people like 3C, stuff like that, they just hit it. They found that one thing that people were really interested in watching, and that's what kind of like a giant wave kind of like pushed them up.
And there's right timing on that. There's luck in that. I mean, it's a combination of being prepared when that moment happens, and there's no guarantees in it.
Yeah.
All right, Danny K reviews with a super chat. Someone offered you 200, and thank you very much for that. If someone offered you $250,000 to go a full year without watching a single movie or TV show, could you do it? I mean, I have to know the context of everything. It's like I mean, obviously that puts my career on hold for a year.
Right. If it did, I guess if it was like, if you weren't reviewing movies.
If I wasn't reviewing movies, if someone who did for a living, I think it's easier to say, yeah, that would be kind of interesting, because it creates a year where I have to do other things. And instead of being a consumer, I become a creator. As of right now, if I were to do that, that means I'm not doing this. Yeah. And this is right now, I'm like, my career worth $250,000? Maybe, because there's a bunch of other things I could explore in that. But it's a very complicated question, because it's a career thing for me too.
Yeah.
And right now, where I'm trying to build momentum and make this thing go places, and taking a year off from this, what is that? How much does that set me back? Like, I don't know, $250,000. I don't think it's worth it at this moment in time in my life to like completely chop the legs off of my YouTube channel.
Yeah. I just kind of think about like whether I could feasibly do it. I mean, you think about like you sit in bed before you go to sleep and you like flip on something. Instances like that where it's like you're not like watching something, but you have it on. So it's
kids. Like
you have kids, yeah.
On that level, I don't even think it's possible.
No, yeah. I mean, also $250,000, a lot of money, not worth that in my opinion, because then you lose like a full year of art. And it's like when you jump back in, you're going to be so out of the loop and ill-informed that like you're basically starting from square one again. And you have a lot of catching up to do. So no, I don't think it's worth it.
$250,000 also falls like right into that spot where, like, on the one hand, it is a lot of money for the average person to make, but it's not so much money that it sets you up for life or something like that.
No,
it doesn't. It's not like, oh, now everything's covered. I'm good. It doesn't do that much with that kind of money. And so then I think it's especially in the case of like where you're movie people, like I just don't know that it's feasible and sets me back too much. CB's home media reviews. Will you rank all 6 Jack Ryan movies when Without Remorse comes out? I'm not positive. I'm not really sure if I will or not. It's probably over 50% likely that I will. If you don't know, I did all the previous ones whenever the first season of Jack Ryan, the TV show, debuted. So I have a ranking of all the ones that currently exist. Will I update it when the new one comes out? I might. I'm not really sure. It's entirely possible, though. It's within the realm of possibility. I don't have an answer on this one. Dorito Chips, what's the worst Best Picture winner? I just don't really exist in that category, so that's entirely a Griffin question. I'm just not a prestige person to have strong enough opinions on a lot of that stuff. Like that is not my expertise. Griffin,
yeah.
you?
Yeah, me. I would say the 2 that come to mind, and maybe 3 would be Driving Miss Daisy. I don't think is a very good Best Picture winner, and then also Crash is a horrible Best Picture winner, especially when you take into account the films that were nominated that year. The fact that Brokeback Mountain didn't win still kind of blows my mind. And Green Book. Green Book is definitely falls into that category just because, again, the other films nominated, and I never really thought that was like a Best Picture worthy one. So,
touch on this one real quick. Trav Max, did you hear rumors of Beyonce appearing in Black Panther 2? I mean, they're just rumors. It doesn't sound like it would be a real thing. I hate the idea. I didn't really even like that she was in The Lion King. I think that you're getting into a point in time of you're stealing jobs from up-and-coming actors, singers, in order to give already someone worth $500 million or whatever that job that could go to someone else just for stunt casting to make 0.1% more money by doing it, by putting Beyonce's name in the credits on some of this stuff when you could get someone that's a better actor. So yeah. I'm pretty sure it's a rumor. I don't think there's any reality to it, but I don't like it at all if it is real, and I don't believe it's real.
Yeah, I don't know why this would be real or whatever. Maybe she'll have like a small little cameo or something. That's fine. I'm okay with that.
I didn't even follow all of it, but like heard the name Storm attached. Her to us.
Well, that I agree with you. That's just completely ridiculous. You have to think that's one. It's stunt casting, and why do you do stunt casting to get people in seats to see a movie? Black Panther doesn't need to get people in. Like they're already going to get people in seats just based off of it being Black Panther.
Right.
And so I don't know. This sounds like a we got this covered, just like made up random story that is kind of circulated around. I don't really buy into it, but if it is true, I agree with you. It's really unfair to people who are actually working actors and up and comers.
Osama, do you think Batman Begins is better in some ways, at least, than The Dark Knight? A lot of ways. There's a lot of things I like about Batman Begins more than The Dark Knight. I go back and forth between those two constantly. Yeah. You can look at my rankings, and you'll see there's a back and forth. And every time that I put Dark Knight over Batman Begins, Cody Leach messages me angry. Hey, you put Dark Knight over Batman Begins again. And I'm going to rewatch the movies very soon because of this review series I'm doing. I don't know which one will come out on top. I have more explicit problems with The Dark Knight than I do with Batman Begins. But The Dark Knight also does some very complex, interesting things. So, but there's absolutely things that I very much, and if like I was going to an island, and I get to take one of them, I would take Batman Begins. It's a more rewatchable film. It's more attuned to the stuff that I like to rewatch a lot because I love stories of becoming. I love origin stories. So by default, there's a lot of that stuff that I just love about that movie. How about you?
Yeah, again, I go back and forth. Truth be told, I think sometimes my my favorite out of the three is actually The Dark Knight Rises, which is the film you didn't mention, which I guess that's controversial. But I think when it comes down to it, Batman Begins is a great Batman movie. Like it's probably the most accurate Batman film we've gotten. It balances everything the character is about, but it kind of sets it in a modern world. But it's not too modern. It still feels stylized, especially when you look at the Narrows and whatnot, and like Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul and stuff like that. It's an amazing Batman movie. The Dark Knight, it's more than a Batman movie. Like it feels like a gripping crime drama, and that's the route that Nolan wanted to go with that. And so they're almost two different movies trying to do two different things. So it really just depends on what you want. Do you want like a more traditional Batman story that's darker and more serious, or do you want that real world crime drama that's a little bit more ambitious and kind of supersedes the genre that it's in? So I don't know. It's really, again, similar to you, I go back and forth, but there's something about just like seeing The Dark Knight and just like I don't know, man. Like it's one of the best movies of all time for a reason. So I don't know.
Well, I think Batman Begins because it stuck to the material a little bit better.
Yeah.
It earned them credibility to deviate from the source material with next films. And a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that. Oh, The Dark Knight is the most true to the comics Batman movie we've ever gotten.
No, it's not. It's really not. Yeah.
And stuff like that. No. I mean, this is very much an interpretation. Like with Nolan's way of thinking, there's a bunch of stuff in there. Sure. And I think that's what is frustrating, that people, because they love the movie, because it's a great movie, they want to defend it as a great Batman movie. Yeah. And it has faults as a Batman movie.
Well, it's so insular, like it's you can watch The Dark Knight out of context of the other two movies, and it stands alone as just a self-contained journey. Now, I never really separate the three of the films because I think it's a great chronicle of Bruce's journey as a person and as a hero. But if you wanted to, this is the one that you could pluck out and just like watch on its own.
So Tax 7S, rank the Shrek movies, please. That's a comment, not a question, I guess. A week from tomorrow, I've already watched.
Oh man,
5
Shrek movies.
If you follow me on Instagram or Twitter, I've been talking about this. So if you follow me everywhere, you kind of get a peek as to what is coming in the near future. Majestic Demon with the Super Chat. Thank you so much. Because you got a ranking of the Shrek films coming soon. Hey, see? You already knew. Is there any chance of a future ranking of the Madagascar trilogy? Sure. I mean, kind of depends on what the Shrek ranking does. I mean, if all these DreamWorks do well, then it makes me go, oh, I should do more of these. And then I think about my content in terms of how do I create paths for viewers. Someone joins in on this adventure right here, and then they find more content that's like it on my channel. And so I'm always thinking of like, how do I have more of these paths for people? And so having a whole DreamWorks path, I'm totally on board with that. But if people don't resonate with the content, then it's not the direction that I would want to go with things. But sure, it's a possibility.
Hey, listen, if you're going to rank the Madagascar movies, you need to include the Penguins of Madagascar, which, in my opinion, is the second best Madagascar movie. So take that as you will.
Crackington, if you could, would you ever cross over with Chris Stugman? Yeah, I mean, I've invited him on the podcast. Like, I've actively invited him on this podcast before, and
he denied us. He hates us
he
so much.
He said, "I hate you so much because your set looks exactly like mine, and therefore I won't be on your podcast because it would be too confusing." No, so he was actually, I messaged him first back in December about it because I met him at a film festival last September. Real friendly guy. He actually bought my drink at the movie, so it was kind of like we had a first date. And I met him in December, and he's very open to it, but he was going into pre-production on a movie. And so he just didn't have time to do interviews or anything like that. And so he couldn't do it at the time. And so I've messaged him since, and I haven't really gotten a reply back. But, I mean, he was totally open to it. And I just don't want to harass the guy. So I don't know if he just missed my message or if he didn't necessarily have an answer at the moment, so he didn't reply back to me. But, I'd love to have him on, of course. I've got a copy of his book right over there. I've been watching his stuff for 8 years, and so I would love to talk movies with him here on the podcast, or just interview him, talk about his story, his filmmaking transition, all of that stuff. So absolutely, I mean, I'm sure at some point in time that'll happen. And I guess I should also throw out there, I've also reached out to Jeremy Johns, and he replied back to me. And so we had a little bit of a back and forth. I was like, "Hey man, I've got a YouTube channel." And he's like, "Yeah, man, I've heard of you. Like, you're big enough that people know." Oh, okay, that's cool. Jeremy Johns knows who I. This is neat. He's like, responded back to me. And so then, at some point in time, that one might happen as well, just if ever he wants to do it. So the invitation is out there, but yeah. Super Samurai with Super Chat. Thank you so much. I just binged through the first 5 Superman movies, and I liked both Christopher Reeves and Brandon Routh. But do you think they didn't continue? Why do you think they didn't continue after Returns? I mean, there's a lot to that. You can look up a bunch of videos on it. There's a channel called Cut Short that I've watched a lot. It talks about canceled movies that almost happened, and he has one on the original Man of Steel 2 that they were working on. Brandon Routh, Superman Returns 2. It was going to be called Man of Steel. That's where the title came from. And they were prepping it, and Brandon Routh was giving interviews about it. And Brandon Routh continues to give interviews about it, that he wanted to do another one, and then it just kind of fell through. Depending on where it's tough to know exactly what happened. Part of it was while they were writing The Dark Knight Rises, David Goyer took a week off from writing it because he was just he hit a wall, and he just started reading a bunch of Superman comics, had this idea in his head. He calls up Christopher Nolan, and he says, "Hey man, I've said in interviews for 5 years straight, I will never do a Superman movie. I don't know how to write Superman, but I just came up with an idea I'm really excited about." He pitches it to Christopher Nolan, and this is right in the window of, Dark Knight came out a year or two before. Inception is either just come out or the studio execs have seen Inception. They're like, Christopher Nolan, this guy's the real deal. Like, this guy's the premium director we have right now. Christopher Nolan loves David Goyer's idea for Superman. He goes to the executives and says, "Hey, you know how I just did Batman, that Dark Knight movie that everyone loved? What about this idea for Superman?" And I don't know exactly how much they just went, Christopher Nolan wants to do Superman, therefore we're going to drop Man of Steel 2 with Brandon Routh. But there was a lot of different stuff kind of going along in there. And Superman Returns wasn't beloved, and it didn't make as much money as they wanted it to make. And The Dark Knight did. And therefore, there's a lot of stuff like that I think they went, all right, let's see where this thing goes. And then Man of Steel ended up happening, the one that we got. But there's a bunch of different stories out there as exactly why Man of Steel, Superman Returns 2 crumbled, and we got the DCEU instead. Did you have anything to add on to that one? Have you heard anything?
No, not really. I didn't really know much about why go into the weeds of why it didn't happen, but I think you don't have to look much past the fact that Superman Returns just didn't really do that well. It just kind of came and went.
Yeah.
And it didn't leave much of an impact. And maybe they were willing to double down on a sequel just to try another one to see if they could break through a little bit more. But I think after Nolan, like you said, after Nolan did The Dark Knight, just things were moving in a different direction, and then we got Man of Steel, which I would argue is the best Superman movie we've ever gotten. So,
and you also have to keep in mind that Superman Returns was a 15-year project for them. That they kept trying to make another Superman movie, and I mean, there's literal full documentary by John Schnepp about one of the failed versions that had Tim Burton and Nicolas Cage cast in it. J.J. Abrams script for another one. They were going to do Batman v Superman. They had so many different. There's literally books and documentaries about how many projects they were trying to get done with Superman, and then they went, "Oh, this guy that's doing X-Men, people love him. Let's do an homage to the first two Richard Donner Superman movies. It's a continuation, kind of, that ignores 3 and 4, and it just wasn't well received. It was the wrong movie at the time, and it wasn't quite exciting enough. It wasn't where the genre was at it, and so it felt from a different era. And so then I think they went, okay, it's not a full-blown bomb, and it wasn't totally trashed by critics. It's just right in that frustrating middle spot of, should we do one more? Should we not? And then you have this example over here of The Dark Knight that is loved by fans, does make money, and you just go, okay, we can do something more successful than what we just did. And that's the direction that they tried to go with it.
Yeah.
So, all right. This question keeps coming in here. Sean, if you could only have what would it be? I don't know. I mean, if you take kind of like any of my best of lists, they're not intended to be like, these are the objective 10 best movies of all time. They're the movies that I go back to the most. Have the biggest place in my heart. So, Terminator 2, Die Hard, and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Maybe swap that one out for Last Crusade. But they would be those action adventure movies from the 80s. I don't know if a comic book movie would make it in there. Maybe Batman Begins. I don't think an MCU film would be in that list as like the one that I would take with me. So.
Yeah, I just like to point out that I originally read that as, Sean, if you could only have 3 months for the rest of your life, what would they be? I was like, what? Well, that's an interesting question. So are you saying like we can only live these 3 months forever, or like we just have 3 months to live, and which 3 months are you going to choose? And so I was prepared to say October, November, and December. I just throw that out there.
Also, very good movies.
Also, very good movies. Yes.
All right. If you guys want to throw any final questions in here, I'll take just a few more, and then I got to go watch an amazing, amazing Kenneth Branagh film that I'm hearing great things about. Dorito Chip Gamer. This is the reverse of the previous one. Dorito Chip Gamer, favorite Best Picture winner. I mean, same answer as before. This is still not my area of expertise. So whatever answer I give, I don't stand behind. I won't agree with myself in the future. But of course, the correct answer is Braveheart, which, this is just not my area of expertise. I don't have strong opinions on Best Picture winner. That's not the realm in which I exist and think about things.
Yeah. I think for me, I mean, obviously you can go like way back and you can say films like The Godfather. You can say films like, whatever, stuff like that. I'll just keep it a little more recent. And probably in my lifetime, my favorite Best Picture winner was Birdman. A movie like that winning Best Picture, I didn't think it could do it, but it did. And it's one of my favorite movies of all time. So.
Charlie Bushman, have you watched the movie Shadow yet? No, but I have it next to my TV. It's one of those ones that I've been watching through these Shrek movies, trying to get ahead on my Nolan reviews. Watched the Bollywood movie, which took a long time because it's a long movie, but it's downstairs. I plan to watch it, and I'll probably review it because I'm actively trying to take some creative chances on my channel right now and have my hit Marvel Mondays that I know will be hits, and then because of that, I have the freedom to experiment a little bit. Mr. Mango Head Jr., what is the most overrated superhero film? I think we'd all agree Catwoman. The way that people just praise the movie Catwoman is unreal because of the basketball scene. You know, uh, overrated is always a tough criteria because people misinterpret when you say something is overrated to say that you mean it's bad. I think there's a strong argument that The Dark Knight is overrated because people treat it like a perfect film, and it's not a perfect film. I think it has some pretty clear problems. But I would give it like a rave review. But people are always shocked when I don't have it at number one on certain lists. Like, how dare you? You love Batman. How do you not have The Dark Knight? Well, here's my problems I have with it. Those aren't problems. That scene was fantastic. Okay, well, if your starting point is it's a perfect movie, then of course it can't be overrated. I don't think it's a perfect movie. So because it's so often treated that way, that's one that would come to mind for me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I think the MCU films I think are extraordinarily popular, but they're not. I don't think largely. And you could say that maybe some of their Rotten Tomato scores are inflated, but I think that's more people misunderstanding what a Rotten Tomato score means.
Yeah.
But they're not. You know, only one of them's getting like a Best Picture nomination, so I wouldn't put them necessarily in the overrated category for the most part. So, what one comes to mind for you?
I mean, I guess I would have to dip into the MCU for this a little bit, but similar to what you said, people I think interpret the Rotten Tomato scores, wrong. But for me, I'm not a big fan of Thor Ragnarok, and I also think that I'm out of my mind. And then I also think, for as much as I enjoy Civil War, I do find it to be a tad overrated in what it's trying to do. Call me crazy. I think BVS Ultimate does the same story better than Civil War, and at least it's consistent. Whereas, I think Civil War kind of it loses track of what it's trying to do about halfway through the movie. So I know.
How dare you? How dare you? Have you seen Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? I've seen both the 2005 film and the BBC special from the early 80s. I don't have much to say about that. I enjoyed them enough. I'm not like a raving fan or anything like that. Have you seen them? The film?
Weirdly, I don't think I have. It's just one that kind of passed me by. I remember when it came out, people were like, "Oh, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy" and everything. I was just like,
yeah, there's parts to it that are funny, and then it's also like you can feel them trying to squish both the plot into one movie, and then also trying to capture a specific writing style in a film, and it's tough to do. Charlie Bishman, what did you think of Sing Street? Yes, I have watched Sing Street. I mean, I enjoyed it. I had fun with it. Much the same way that I wasn't going bananas for La La Land. I wasn't going bananas for it, but I could certainly see why people really enjoyed it and thought it was uplifting and hit a lot of really solid notes for me. But at the same time, it wasn't one that I could say was like, man, I absolutely love this one. I wasn't quite on that level, but yeah, we watched it a couple weeks back. So I had that date night that I mentioned in my fan mail opening that we sat down and watched it. But Shadow, I haven't gotten to yet. Have you seen Sing Street?
Yes, I have. Sing Street was one of my favorite movies of, was it 2016, 2017? 2015 even? I don't even remember which year, but it was it was like a top 4, favorite movie of the year it came out. I absolutely fell in love with that. I thought it was so endearing, great music, great original songs, I'll say that. And I actually just recently rewatched it. I think, is it Joe Carney or John? I think it's Joe Carney. He, to me, is like the Irish Richard Linklater. He just really gets those great coming of age, kind of romantic stories in there, and so I loved it. And I don't know if you ever saw
the problem I have going into it is that for 2-3 years, people have been, oh man, it's fantastic. It's top 5 movie of the year.
Yeah.
It's so uplifted, so positive, and so then I went into it with that as the bar. And so then anything that's not touching this as I'm watching it just feels like disappointment.
Yeah,
even though
it's
like literally 3 years of buildup for a film that everyone else just got to watch it and be like, oh, this was just such a pleasant surprise. Just
sure, yeah. Did have you seen any of his other movies, like the movie Once or like Begin Again with Mark Ruffalo or stuff like that?
I don't think so. Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah.
Javier, can y'all have Tyler on the podcast? I mean, it's not outside of the question. Of people that I'm looking to invite, Tyler's probably not high on the list. And I don't mean that in any sense, but it's not another thing. It's like if he lived where I'm at, maybe I would just have him here in the studio.
Yeah.
You guys don't know, Tyler's a very good friend of mine that we all met over YouTube back when we all first started. And so then like I'm in a I was going to say AOL chat group, like back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Facebook chat with him that we've had open for 4 years now, almost 3.5 years now. And so I talk with him daily about movies, but he's discontinued his channel 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so then he's not really looking to kind of do this. Like he joins you on yours, and he's not opposed to doing it. But in this turn, and I think he has some good insights. I have obviously we have great rapport with him. But it's a matter of all the people that I could have on here, is just not the default one that I would go to, since it's not progressing his career. It doesn't add a new voice, an audience to mine. So it's just nothing strategic about it in particular. But, like if whenever I go out to California next and we record a podcast live out there, if he was in the room, I'd be totally fine with that. But he's not someone that like I want to like add to a live stream. So,
Sure.
And it's nothing against him at all or anything like that. Here's an important question. Best and worst Rocky training montage. I am actively thinking about doing a video on this very soon. I think next week I'm actually going to do the final fights. So I brought this one up not even really to answer your question, because the worst training montage, of course, is Rocky 5, where he's helping that Tommy gun jerk train a little bit. Best one, I don't know. I would say I need to rewatch them, but that's a lie, because I've watched all of them multiple times within the last 2 weeks. Because I'll put them on while I'm training with my kids trying to do my one-arm push-ups. So, but it's tough to beat Rocky 4.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's like that's the training montage.
Yeah,
like, I know there were ones before it, but like that's the one.
Okay, I've got a couple in here that are popping up a good bit. We'll probably close out soon. A comic book movie you liked a lot but was a box office flop. I'll use that for the purposes of this very loosely, because some flop, I think the correct definition of flop means that it legitimately lost money, not that it underperformed. Right. Like I wouldn't call Birds of Prey a flop. I would call it a box office disappointment. But it's a movie that, compared to its budget, didn't do terrible. But a lot of people, you'll read articles, it flopped, it bombed. That's a misuse of that. So even to your question, that would be an example of one that the way other people use the term flop, I would say I really liked Birds of Prey. Other people would say it flopped. I didn't. I liked the Thomas Jane Punisher movie. That one was not like a big box office hit. Actually, just yesterday, listened to an interview with the writer-director Jonathan Hensley on screenwriting. And so he talked about some of that a little bit. It was real interesting. He almost did a Hulk movie with Joe Johnston.
That's weird. That's weird.
And so he wrote one of the screenplays for Jumanji back in the day. And he only did it because he liked Joe Johnston. He's not normally gravitated toward that sort of thing. And then I guess they did an episode of Young Indiana Jones Chronicles together. And therefore, that's the only reason he did Jumanji, because he liked Joe. So he met up with Joe because he was like, hey, I really want you to do this one. And that's why he ended up writing whatever that particular draft of the screenplay for Jumanji was. And then jumped forward like 5-6 years before Ang Lee was doing the Hulk. It was Joe Johnston and Jonathan Hensley working on it. And then Joe Johnston left, so it was going to be directed by Jonathan Hensley. And then there was a swap with the studio executives, and the studio executive just didn't want to greenlight anything that was moving forward before, so then it fell apart for that reason. Totally random offshoot there. Which one comes to your mind of a comic book movie that you liked that didn't do well at the box office?
I thought I thought about Kingsman 2. I don't know if it was a box office bomb per se, but it definitely didn't do as well as the first one. I think I don't remember. I could be completely wrong on that one, but I am one of the psychos who actually preferred the second Kingsman over the first one.
Things that you say on my podcast.
I know. I'm so sorry. The I don't. I'm trying. I'm trying to think of which ones it would be. Like, because John Carter isn't a comic book movie, but it flopped. But it's based off of like, those original novels and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know. That's tricky.
Mr. Lightbricks has been asking this one for a while now. Have you seen The Thing? If yes, what is y'all's thoughts? If no, you should see it. If you do a John Carpenter ranking ever, can you add it to it? There's like 4 questions in there. First one, have I ever seen The Thing? Yes. What did I think about The Thing? I haven't watched it in a very long time. I'd heard so many things about how disgusting and gross it was, and so whenever I watched it, I didn't actually think it was all that gross. I don't know. Maybe I was just in a weird mood. Maybe I'd been eating a lot of steak, and so I just like raw meat infect me. Yeah, but I didn't think it was really as gross as its reputation. It's a solid Carpenter film, but I mean, it's been a long time since I really do need to rewatch it. If you do a John Carpenter, could you add it to it? I mean, if I did a John Carpenter ranking, I would have all the John Carpenter movies in it, so I'm sure the Thing would be in there. How about you?
I have seen The Thing. I do very much enjoy it, and I think it's got great body horror and great practical effects, and I think it's a lot better than the remake that came out like in 2011, which was, I don't think, very good.
All righty. We'll take just a couple more in here. Can you invite Ralph the Movie Maker to the podcast? I'm not really familiar with his work. So sometimes on some of these ones, the reason I wouldn't invite them is because tonally they don't necessarily match what I do. I'm not super familiar with Ralph's work. People have mentioned it before, so I've looked into it. And it seemed like there was a bit of a tonal difference between kind of like my let's be positive about movies and the vibe that he has, that I just don't think it would mesh well. It wouldn't be what you're wanting. Same with Your Movie Sucks. Like, it's just tonally that doesn't fit with what I do. If your whole concept is Your Movie Sucks. And it's not some people like that sort of thing, like the whole cinema sins. Let's just go through a movie and pinpoint a technical issue like that some people really enjoy that. That's not something that I'm interested in. So that's not a good fit for my channel. And so that's sometimes what I think about when people to who to add on here. Have you seen Rick and Morty and Brooklyn Nine-Nine? No, I haven't seen either one. I've not seen a single episode of either one. Have you?
Brooklyn Nine-Nine I've seen a little bit. Well, I've actually seen a little bit of both. I like Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I just don't really watch it that much. But it's good. It's a good show. Rick and Morty just isn't for me. I get the appeal, but I just, I'd rather watch other things.
All right. I think we'll close out. Oh, there's a couple things. Do you enjoy How It Should Have Ended? Yes, I watch a lot of those. If you just kind of to talk about things that I do, like I don't watch CinemaSins at all. Any of that stuff that's just kind of pointing out flaws, it's just not for me. If there's not a wit to it, so like I watch a lot of pitch meetings, which are kind of the same idea, but it's with a wit. It's funny. It's a lot of observation with humor involved in it. Same with How It Should Have Ended. It's pointing out flaws and stuff, but there's a punchline. So it's the plot contrivances, the tropes, the silly things that studio executives make. It's pointing that out and then adding a joke on the end. And so that's entertainment. But when it's literally just like, and then the cup moved on the table, I think that's a problem. Even I notice it in my son, that he's watching some of these, like we watch the Corridor Crew, VFX artists react and stuntmen react, and then pitch meeting. And so then it's criticism of films through nitpicking minutia. And so he's not watching like my reviews that are discussing plot and how does it actually work in context. Yeah. And so then his version of film criticism is he's watching a movie with me as an 8-year-old and he's going, "Oh, did you see that? There's a guy spinning in the background." And I know what he's doing. I know what he's talking about. I know what he's referencing and where he got that from. It's from a Corridor Crew video, but it's not teaching people to think about films the way that they're actually intended to be watched, which is not watching them in slow-mo to find the problems with the choreography. That's not what they're intended to do. I think a lot of that is hurting the way that people watch movies by doing all of that. So those are some thoughts on some of those different ones. And I've also invited Ryan George of Pitch Meetings onto the podcast as well. He's not able to be on it. He's literally not able to come on the podcast. Jay said a super chat. He said, "Do you prefer Modern Warfare or Remedial Chaos Theory?" He's referring to two of the best episodes of the show Community. I like Modern Warfare because I love action movies, and therefore it comes out on top for me.
Which season are they in?
Modern Warfare season 1. Remedial Chaos Theory is season 3. Modern Warfare is the first paintball episode. Remedial Chaos Theory is one where there's 5 or 6 different timelines.
Right. I don't know. It's been so long since I've seen either of them. Let's go with Remedial Chaos Theory. Sure, that one. They're both good from what I remember, and it was very long ago that I watched Community. Or I didn't even watch the entirety of it. I've seen greatest hits type stuff. But.
All right. One more time, why don't you tell people where they can find you? And
sure.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Yeah, for sure. If you guys are interested in more of what I have to say, you can head on over to the Film Speak channel and check out all the shenanigans I got going over there. And then you can also give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller.
And as always, not as always, since we just took 3 weeks off, but we do record these ones live. So we should be back next Wednesday, same exact time to talk. So we'll actually be back in just 5 days this time, hopefully, fingers crossed, and to talk movies way too much with you. See you later.
See you.
Bye-bye.